How many of you are excited for the big game today? Wow. Like a bunch of soccer fans in here or what? You're upset because your team didn't make it? Okay, I understand that. But it's going to be fun. Now, I'm imagining most of you will probably watch the game, even if you're not a huge football fan, because you love the commercials. Yeah. The commercials are fun. Plus, it gives you an excuse to eat just about anything you want to eat for a couple of hours. I actually like football quite a bit. I love watching football on TV. Not much of a player. As a matter of fact, I played a little football when I was in the third grade. I was on a team, and we were sponsored by a company named Acme. We were the Acme Armadillos. Not a ferocious animal per se, but I didn't know anything about football, and so they divided us up, a bunch of little kids, and I give credit to the coaches because I can imagine 30 8-year-olds running around, and They taught me how to block, and this is what I remember. I remember that they said, okay, you have to bend your knees a little bit, and you kind of put your hands like this, and you're going to block the people in front of you. And the person on the other side was instructed to do the same thing, to block. Now, what they left out was the purpose of the blocking. For example, the ball is snapped, and the goal in football is to take the ball, whether you throw it or run it, and get it over the goal line. But I thought the goal was just to block. I had no idea why I was blocking this person. That person didn't know what they were trying to do either. So we would block, block, block. Meanwhile, there's a play going on. They're down in the end zone. We're just blocking away. Someone should explain to me, like, no, you're trying to stop him from getting it's flag football, from getting the flag. I was clueless. I didn't understand what my purpose was in the game. And in that sense, I didn't really enjoy it that much. But when it comes to the church and spiritual gifts, there's a lot of us walking around that aren't really clear about our purpose. And so we're not able to enjoy our spiritual gifts in the way we should. Now, today is exciting because we finish up this series. It's called Gifted. It's about the role of the spiritual gifts in the church. We're going to finish it up with this ministry tailgate. It's going to be out there. Pastor Matt talked about it a little bit, but you're going to get a chance to go out there and see where you can use your gifts. The ministry team leaders will be out there. They've got signs and all kinds of fun things to do. There's going to be food. There's going to be games for kids. And you're going to get a chance to figure out not just how to block, but how to do something that makes sense in a ministry capacity. So the one thing I want to say about this is it's been an interesting series. I don't know about you, but I feel like I've learned more teaching this series than a lot of times when I'm studying. I'm figuring things out too. I love that. Hopefully that's the case for you. But the one thing is it's not really sort of concluded. I want you to continue thinking, learning, and discussing the spiritual gifts. You can't cover such a big topic really in 6 weeks like we did. So at home around the dinner table or with friends or in small group or Bible study, keep talking about these spiritual gifts. There's still much to learn. Now let's jump into our passage for today and see what we can gather from 1 Peter. This is a letter written by the Apostle Peter to a group of Christians spread around what is now modern-day Turkey. But he's writing to them about sort of what he considers the end of time. Check out verse 7. The end of all things is at hand. Therefore, be self-controlled and sober-minded for the sake of your prayers. How many of you feel sometimes like it's the end of all time, isn't it? I mean, we're shooting down spy balloons. Apparently there was an alien craft that was spotted. Did you see that? What's going on? But in seriousness, I think Peter's point here is I think we need to approach the world like it could be the end of all time. Jesus is coming back. Amen? Amen. And so we always have to be on guard. He's saying, okay, for the sake of your prayers, be self-controlled and sober-minded. Verse 8, above all, keep loving one another earnestly, since love covers a multitude of sins. That's the truth. Show hospitality to one another without grumbling. One of the main questions people asked me along the way as we were learning, they said, well, isn't hospitality one of the spiritual gifts? How many of you thought all your life, hospitality, that's one of the spiritual gifts? You probably thought, oh, I have that gift. Well, here's what I think. I don't think hospitality is specifically a spiritual gift. I think hospitality is something we're all supposed to do all the time. He says it right here. You have to show hospitality all the time. It brings up some great questions because there are some other things that we thought were gifts, spiritual gifts, that just turns out I think are things we're supposed to do. Some people think there's a spiritual gift of prayer. Well, actually, prayer, again, is another thing that we're just supposed to do. Okay, and I think that's important because I think everybody can pray. There's no wrong way to pray. I like to say that frequently. If you are being honest and sincere in your prayers, you cannot mess up a prayer. You don't have to have the right words. You don't necessarily have to be on your knees. You don't necessarily have to fold your hands. You don't necessarily have to close your eyes. If you're honest about talking to God, whether that's out loud or in your head, you can't mess that up. That's something we're all supposed to do. But he says, make sure that you show hospitality to everyone. It's interesting because in the book of Hebrews, it says, don't neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares. There's this idea like, I don't know, maybe there's angels in the earth for whatever reason, and you're being hospitable to them, and you're being hospitable to strangers, and you never know if that person is an angel. I've never encountered that, but I've certainly heard stories, and there's stories in the Bible. He goes on, 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 10, he says, as each has received a what? Gift. Use it to serve one another as good stewards of God's varied grace. This is what's beautiful about the spiritual gifts. They're not all the same. And everybody's not given the same one. And some people have different amounts of some of the spiritual gifts because God's the one who provides those. You know, we did the spiritual assessment test. How many of you did that? Just raise your hand if you did that. All right. And we're going to put this up. If you haven't gotten a chance to do this yet, go ahead and shoot this with your phone. Take a picture of this or scan it. And you can actually do it while I'm preaching if you'd like. That's okay. It says it's 72 questions, but it sounds kind of difficult, but it goes very fast. Matter of fact, you're supposed to do it quickly. We've had 150 people respond and take the assessment so far, which I think is amazing. But here's what I figured out. There is a lot of diversity in terms of what spiritual gifts this church has been given. There's a few exceptions, and they come in a couple categories. I found this to be interesting. More than half of everybody that took this assessment in our church, more than half scored high in two areas. One, service, and two, encouragement. That doesn't surprise me at all because this is a church I know that loves to serve. This is a church that loves to encourage people as well. Then there's a couple other categories that I found interesting. Do you know that more than 25% of everybody who took the test scored high in the gift of giving? That doesn't surprise me at all either because this is a very generous church. This is one of those things, when I talk to my pastor friends, they're always blown away about how generous we are as a church. We're not a big church, but we love to give. And the other thing is more than a third of the people who took the test scored very high in acts of mercy, which is an opportunity to serve each other, to do things for people who are struggling. And you're going to hear about that in just a little moment. But the rest is a very, very good mix. Just like the Apostle Paul says, like God is the one who gives those out in varied forms. Okay? They're assigned or they're empowered by the same Spirit, but God sort of apportions to each individually as he wills. But now there's a section of the scripture that we don't want to overlook. And it's when he says, as each has received a gift, use it to serve one another. And that's a part of the goal with our ministry tailgate event. It's kind of like a ministry fair if you think about it. All the different ministry leaders there at the table, they're going to let you know like what gifts work in their ministry. So for example, if you're interested in being on the video team, a gift of service, a gift of administration, a gift of evangelism wanting to share the message. Like, those are good gifts to work on that team. Or, for example, if you're interested in working in the family ministry, people who have the gift of service or the gift of teaching or shepherding or evangelism, that's a perfect gift mix to work over there. Or let's say you want to be like a first impressions, like a greeter at the front door, or someone who works in the welcome tent. You would have the gift of encouragement. That would be perfect for there. Or the gift of service, or even the gift of administration. Now, there's a lot. I'm not going to go on, but the point is, we want to give you an opportunity to do what? To serve each other. To serve each other. Now, some of you are going to realize, well, my particular list of gifts don't necessarily work to serve inside the church. That's okay too, because there are lots and lots of opportunities to serve outside the church. And I want to introduce you guys to Terry Hart. She's one of the directors of our care ministry. She's going to share about an opportunity coming up to share in the community. Would you guys welcome her to the stage?
Hi, everybody. Let's use our gifts that God has given to each of us to glorify Him, first of all, Amen. And to serve others. We have an opportunity to do that in our community. We have a Sharing Center Serve Night coming up. It's March 10th, and it's going to be from 5 to 8. And everyone 5 years old and older is welcome. We're going to have a fun evening where we're going to go through a bunch of items that are donated. They need to get them ready to sell in their thrift store. We're going to set up different stations throughout the evenings to make it a fun time. And one of the stations is a pizza station, so you do not have to cook that night, so just come on over. It'll be fun. You do need to register now. Please try to do it really early because this is open to the public, and I want us to get in. So you can do that by going to LifePointChurch.com or using our Church Center app. Let's unwrap the gifts that God has given to us and use them.
Amen. I love that. What gifts do you have on there again? Let me just check. So the gift of mercy, that makes sense. The gift of service, the gift of giving, the gift of faith. That's important because sometimes when you're working with people that are struggling, you need to have faith where they don't. So I love that. Appreciate you guys and all you're doing. And Joe and Terry will be out at the ministry fair too, so you can talk to them there, and perhaps they'll even get you to help you sign up. So 1 Peter 4:11, let's take a look at that. What does he go on to say? Whoever speaks as one who speaks oracles of God, whoever serves as one who serves by the strength that God supplies. This is interesting. Two critical things to notice. Peter lists a couple of the gifts here. These are two of the 18 gifts that I talked about. So this is the gift of prophecy and then the gift of service. Remember the gift of prophecy. It sounds kind of strange, but really it's the ability to speak God's truth boldly without fear of reprisal. And God's truth is found in the Word. So if you're the kind of person who's willing to hold somebody accountable, to have a conversation with somebody who needs to hear the truth and do that in grace, you very well might have the gift of prophecy. We had several people score very high in that area. But then also the gift of service, which encompasses so many different things. The gift of service is by far the largest gift. I mean, the person who doesn't mind moving chairs around, the person who cooks for somebody else, the person who will go and watch toddlers, the person who will grill hot dogs on a Sunday. That's the gift of service. So he talks about a couple. But what's important here is where the power to energize these gifts comes from. Look what it says. By the strength that God supplies. By the strength that God supplies. It's interesting because the word here that the Greek translators used is the same Old Testament word that was used to talk about God creating the stars. Okay, think about this. God made the stars. Each star is a giant sun. Do you know how much power is in the sun? Well, it's a lot. Do you know how many stars or suns there are out there? A lot. There's a number. 1 septillion. 1 septillion. That's 1 billion trillion. Let me let that sink in for a second. God spoke it. All of that power. 1 billion, or 200 billion trillion, which is also a 1 with 24 zeros. What's Peter saying? The the power that God has, not just to create everything, but to power every single son with his word. That's the power that you have to use your gift. And that's an important factor because why? Because God's power is limitless. There's no limit to it. How about your power?
Yes, very
Limited. I had to have someone help me open a jar of pickles the other day. That's how much power I have. But remember, the spiritual gift that you've been given is powered by God. Given by God, powered by God, and if you use the gift in the right way to serve others, it results in the glory of God. He continues, in order that in everything, you should underline that in your Bible, in everything, God may be glorified through Jesus Christ. To him belong glory and dominion forever and ever. Isn't that the goal of everything that we do? Well, it should be. The fact that Peter has to mention it here means that at some point other people thought differently. Like maybe the goal of their gift would be to bring themselves glory. Remember that some of these gifts, they kind of put people on a pedestal. You got to be careful. The gift of teaching places you in front of people. And people will tell you, boy, you really understand the Bible. Boy, you can preach like nobody have ever heard. Boy, you're the best speaker I've ever heard. I've never heard those things, but other people have. But right, the next thing you know, you're like, wow, I'm pretty good. Or maybe, it's the gift of leadership and you're able to inspire people and you're the focal point of some big movement. And the next thing you know, you're thinking that the gift serves you and brings you glory. Or maybe it's the gift of tongues. Paul talked about the gift of tongues for like 2.5 chapters because some of the people were using the gift of tongues as a way to sort of bring themselves glory. Or the gift of miracles. I mean, there are some showy gifts. And we have to be careful. Remember the purpose of your gift, whatever it is. It's not for your glory. It's only for his glory. That's why when Paul was writing about these spiritual gifts, he warned them that they could be misused. At the end of chapter 12 in 1 Corinthians, we studied this a couple weeks ago, he says, I'll show you a more excellent way. And then he goes into 1 Corinthians 13. It's a chapter that most of you are familiar with, mostly because you've been to weddings. And he begins sharing the importance of love for each other, and that's the reason for the gifts. And he actually says there's a time when these gifts won't be needed. He says, as for prophecies, they will pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will pass away. He's like, look, there's a time when they're going to be gone. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall fully know, even as I have been fully known. Now faith, hope, and love abide, these three, but the greatest of these is love. What's he saying? Like right now, we only have just a bit of vision into what's going to happen. These gifts are just a taste of what's going to happen in the future. But they're not going to be necessary forever. Why? Because one day we'll be face to face with God. There will be no need to speak prophecy because you will be in God's presence. There will be no need for tongues because you will talk to God directly. There'll be no need to serve or no need to give. These are gifts that are given to us while we're here on earth. One day, Paul says, there's only one thing that will remain, and that's love. Maybe that's a good definition for heaven. Think about that. Perfect love forever. That's heaven. Perfect love forever. So what do you think? Do you know what your gift is or your gifts are? And are you ready to start using them? Or are you sort of just kind of doing like I was doing, just blocking, not really knowing the purpose of what you were doing, not really seeing, not even knowing the reason for what you're doing here in church? Has it felt like that? Well, the spiritual gifts are meant to put you into the game at whatever position you need to be in, whether that's service or teaching or administration. All of these gifts are meant to give you purpose, and they're powered by God. Remember, powered by God, the same God that makes the stars shine every single night. Now, the gift assessment that we made, and remember, we made that just for this church. It's customized to what we've been preaching and what we've been saying all along. It's a good tool, but it's just a tool. It's a start, really. So if you haven't taken it, I would suggest taking it. But whatever that shows, that may or may not be your gift. The most important thing you have to do is pray about it and ask the Spirit to reveal it to you. That may be one of the tools. The second thing that you've got to do is talk to your trusted friends and say, hey, I scored real high in this area. What do you think? And be willing to hear their feedback. I hope you've got some good, honest friends that could say, no, that is not your gift. I know you think you have the gift of encouragement, but that's a part of the process too. You put all of that together and you'll begin to sort of identify what those gifts are. And I think too, sometimes those gifts change a little bit. The Bible doesn't say once you've given the gift, that's it. I think at some point he may develop some other gift. You may grow in one area. You may learn more. You may become gifted in this specific area because that's what God needs you to do. And then there's another thing, and that is just because you have a heavy gift in one area, it doesn't mean that you can ignore the rest. Right. So you're like, well, I have the gift of teaching, so I do not have the gift of encouragement. So I'm not going to say anything nice to anybody anymore. Or just because you have the gift of encouragement, you're like, well, I don't have to serve. So good luck with those chairs. Good luck with those kids. I think you're doing a great job, but it's not for me. No, I mean, obviously, we all have to serve. We all have to encourage. Oh, you might say, well, I've got, the gift of service, so I'll do whatever you need me to do, but I don't have the gift of giving, so I'm not going to give anything. Right? Do you see how this works? You are given sort of a gift profile that is special and unique to you, and you can use it, but we all have to do many of these things. They're biblical principles, for example, serving and giving and encouraging and so forth. Okay, what I want to do now is dismiss the ministry team leaders. So if you're a ministry team leader, I want you to go ahead and get out to your table and get everything ready. And I just feel like it's okay if we just give them a little round of applause on the way out. Love you guys. I think most of them might actually even be out there already. They're going to get their stuff ready for you guys. There's a bunch out there. There's the deacon ministry will be out there, the hospitality ministry, family ministry, the video ministry, music and tech, first impressions. They're all going to be out there, and you can talk with them. Remember, too, these are opportunities to serve inside the church, but we don't just serve each other. We have to serve our community too. So there's some opportunities to serve outside of the church. And let me put it to you this way too. Maybe you look at your gifts profile and you're like, well, I don't get it. I don't see anything here, and I'm not sure how to serve outside. Well, talk to us. Let's figure it out. There may be an opportunity to create some kind of an opportunity somewhere. Maybe there's a ministry that needs to start, and maybe we can do that. If you want to reach out, if you're not able to catch me after the service today, I'm going to give you this number. It's a text number. You text 407-988-0991. Let us know that you'd like to talk about it.